Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast. And I've got my 6 things all together this morning, so I am ready to get started for the day. Well, again, first I have to apologize for missing last week. So I ended up, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, having some sort of concerning health stuff going on, and it was just, it was a lot. It was a little bit stressful. We were going to doctors and things like that, and while I am doing a lot better, I've just been extremely tired over the rest of the week and was having trouble getting up early enough to do all of this before breakfast. And so the week just flew by. It was like some kind of weird time warp thing. I didn't even really realize that the week was over until it was already the weekend. So anyway, thank you for your patience on that, but back to it. And like I said, feeling a lot better, thankfully. So number one thing I did do I think maybe it was Friday, anyway, sometime over the past few days, I finally went to my computer and finished up the cover for Firmament Eleftheria. And like I think I mentioned, my artist had finished the actual art portion of it, and then I just had to put on the title, the back cover copy, make sure the correct numbers on the spine, all that sort of thing. And so I got that done, and so I'm hoping to reveal the cover this week. Since I still don't have my blog, I won't be able to do a post in that way, but I can at least put on social media, and I'm really excited to share it because he did an amazing job, and I think it looks great. Number 2, my editor has been working on the actual editing portion of the book, and it's been fun because my editor is a really good friend of mine, and he's also a writer, and so he's been reaching out to me about some of the aspects of the story, to talk about them as he's reading, which I really love. Like, I like getting a few, real-time reactions. But one thing that's interesting is, so he is a really big fan of the world building portion of storytelling, and especially when it comes to speculative fiction, of course, that is a huge aspect of it, but that is not my favorite. I really do not care for world building, and so I'll usually just think of a few interesting details and just kind of let the rest be, whatever falls into place. Like, I do not sit down and plan out the world, and maybe that shows because it just doesn't get the amount of tension in my stories that it does in some others. And so anyway, he was sort of challenging some of my world building aspects and had a few questions about things, and some of the questions I was able to answer, and may try to go back and throw a line in the book to explain. Like, one example is in the civilization of Kanaske in this book, they have a big wall around the city. And he was asking, what is the wall for? There's no wild animals or anything on the planet, so there's no other people on the planet, just what do they need a wall for? And I did have a reason for it, which is just to protect them from sandstorms, which is something that does come up in the previous book where they visit this place, but it doesn't come up in this book. So then I realized, oh yeah, that does, if you haven't read or don't remember that from the first book where this city is mentioned, then it's not going to make a lot of sense. So I should probably just throw a sentence in there somewhere about the sandstorms and how they built the walls to protect from that. And then some other things too, like we had some good discussions about some choices I made in the world building of this civilization, some things he didn't think make sense, and had some good ideas to address them, but I'm probably not going to because one thing, and I'll get into this more later, but in the same way that those kinds of details don't interest me that much as a writer, they also don't really as a reader. Like, I don't think about those details or find the amount of delight in them when reading that some others do. And so I do think there's a place for the more fully immersive, completely fleshed out worlds, and a place where it's really just there to serve the story and the characters, and those details don't need to be there. But of course, it's a fine line between I don't feel like it's necessary for the story and I'm just being lazy. And I don't want to do that. I don't just want to be like, it doesn't matter, I don't want to do it, so I would definitely try to find that balance and maybe adding a few details into my, world building when I get the edit back. But anyway, it's just, like I said, I'll get into more later the different aspects of storytelling, but it's definitely interesting. Number 3, I thought I would talk a little bit about my reading goal. I really can't remember if I've said here before. I know I had mentioned at some point that my official goal was 50, but that I also had a secret goal. And so I'll go ahead and reveal that now, because I actually already surpassed 50 books for the year last month in June, which should be able to give a little clue that my goal for this year is 100 books, because I am on track for that, which is awesome. And when I decided to do that, when I decided to try to read 100 books this year, I was already a little bit behind. So the fact that I've been able to catch up and then stay caught up is really exciting for me. I don't think I would do 100 books again next year, because it is definitely a lot, but it hasn't been like, an insane amount. It's not like I'm like constantly reading, but it really hasn't been that hard for me to do. But I do think going back to a little less pressure next year would be good. But I also really am glad that I decided to do that this year, because it's been a while. Like, I think I only did 100 books once, and I was not diligent to keep up with it, so it was not a great experience. But since this year I have, and I haven't been letting myself fall behind, it's been really great. And there's been a few times lately where, I see a book on the shelf and I'm just like, I've been wanting to read that book for a long time. Like, I'm just going to read it now. I'm reading 100 books this year. Why not make sure I get some in that I've, like, there's literally some books I bought years ago that I keep meaning to read and just haven't. So, like, why not? Just go ahead and do it. So I'm doing that now, and I've been able to do that a few times this year, and that's been really great, because there's different categories of books, to read. I have book club books. I have, more practical, books that I need to read, like about parenting or marriage or stuff like that. And there's just books I want to read, and there's, books I may need to read for this project or that, but so trying to make sure I hit like all the different categories. So number 4, my oldest daughter's birthday was this past week. She turned 4. And I know I've mentioned before that she loves spelling words, and she's obsessed and is constantly asking me how to spell things. Well, they have some little alphabet magnets, like this little foam magnets they can play with on the door or the fridge or whatever, with, letters, but we had the complete alphabet, and that was all. So we only had one of each letter. And so I had to, once she started wanting to spell with magnets, there were some words I would have to be like, oh, we can't spell that because, it has 2 O's and we only have 1 O or here or whatever. And then she would start doing that with words by herself. Like, she would ask me how to spell something, and when I would tell her, she would go, oh, well, we can't do that with magnets because we only have one, whatever. Like, she wanted to spell mommy, and she's like, oh, we only have 1 M, so we can't spell that. Like, she would figure it out by herself, and it was really cute. But I was like, we need some more magnets. So I found this set for her birthday that has, I believe it's 6 of every letter. I think there's 2 capitals and 4 lower cases of every single letter or something like that. There's a lot. And so I gave it to her, like, now you can spell anything you want. And so she's been playing with them every afternoon. And it's just been really cute. And so we won't have to worry about that anymore. Number 5, on my currently reading, I know that I mentioned a while back, I don't even know when, that I was rereading a book I love called The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King, which is a sort of Sherlock Holmes fan fiction, technically, I guess, even though it's like officially published books. But anyway, and it was a book I've loved and read many times, but I had never read, most of the series. So I've been continuing to do that, and I've been doing most of them on audiobook. And they make good audiobooks because they're really fun and enjoyable to listen to, but they're not too like heavy duty. Like, you don't have to be paying like intense attention the whole time or anything. So, I can do lots of other things while I'm listening. So I'm up to book number 9. This one is called The Language of Bees, and not all of them are bee related. Actually, this is the only other one so far. But it's been really fun to finally, I've been wanting for years and years to read this series, and so to finally just do it has been great, and having a series where you can keep looking forward to the next one, because there's a lot. I don't know how many there are, but there's still like several more after that, after this one. And like I said, this is book 9. So there's quite a few, and having something to look forward to and to automatically move on to after I finish a book is always so much fun. And definitely I would say, so I love the first book, like absolutely love it, read it many times. And then some of the ones in between, I liked them a lot, but they weren't my favorite books ever. Like, I felt like she does a lot of like descriptions and that sort of thing, and she does it really well. Like, I'm actually paying really close attention to try to learn from it, because I'm not good at that. But I also don't really enjoy, again, that aspect of reading or writing, and so it can feel a little slow for me. And also I did feel that in some of the books she was a little slow to get around to the mystery. Like, they're all more or less murder mysteries as far as I can recall, but sometimes it would be like half the book or more before the murder happens, and they would just be kind of like maybe on some, maybe they're not all murders, I don't really know. I just know sometimes it took a while to really get into what the mystery was, and so sometimes I would kind of feel like, oh, like what are we actually supposed to be solving here? Like, this is supposed to be a mystery, and it was more just them like going around, I don't know, they go different places trying to figure out what they're even supposed to be doing. Like, I don't know. It was fine, but I would sometimes feel like it was a little slow to really get into the mystery. And these last couple books, the one I'm reading now and the one before, have not felt like that. Like, I felt like they really got into it pretty quickly, and I was really intrigued. And also the mysteries were of a much more personal nature. Like, the one in the last book was involving the death of the main character's parents. The one in this book involves Sherlock Holmes's son and his family. And so I like that too, that it just has a little bit more of a like personal aspect to it. And so there's a little bit higher stakes in a sense as well. And so I'm really enjoying the series. I'm really enjoying this particular one. And I don't remember how many there are, but the last one was the one that's out. The latest one, I should say, was just written, like, I think last year, so I'm not sure that she's done. And I think the first one was written in the 90s, so it's been going on for a while. But I'm enjoying it a lot, and looking forward to the rest of the series and to seeing if she is planning to write more or what happens with it. So number 6, on my ramble for today, I've mentioned several times this morning about just different aspects of storytelling that different people are drawn to. And this is something I've thought a lot about. I tend to overthink everything, so that's one reason. But also, it just is interesting, and I find you tend to be drawn to different things than other people in reading, which is why obviously there are so many different kinds of books, and certain people like certain kinds of books and not others. We all like different things. But I think that goes beyond like the genre and type of story, and into the different elements of story that are given priority. And I find this as a reader and as a writer. So like I mentioned, world building, not so much my thing. Description, not so much. Also action. I don't like to read about like battle scenes or fight scenes or even people going places. And this is partly because, like I've said before, I do have aphantasia, so I can't really visualize any of it. So it's sort of confusing for me. But it's just also like, it's not really what I read stories for. And I know some people, like I said, my editor and really good friend just loves world building and is so fascinated by it and really good at it and really just delights in that aspect of a story. Whereas for me, I don't care about the history of Middle Earth and all the, details of the elvish society, like whatever. I just don't, that's not what I read for. That's not what I write for. I admire it, and I'm super impressed by the people that do it really comprehensively, but I just don't care for that really in my writing and my reading. And so for me, what I really love is the characters and the relationships. Like, that is my number one draw when it comes to storytelling, to reading things, to watching things. Like, I want to see the characters and their emotions and their growth and development and their relationships. And so I do also in my writing primarily focus on the characters, their emotions, and their relationships. My characters tend to do a lot of thinking and a lot of feeling, and there's a lot of dialogue because the relationships are really the biggest thing for me. Like that was almost all of my books have been theorized on the basis of some relationship. Like in the Firmament series, in the series as a whole, it's the father and daughter, and then there's different relationships throughout the series that get, highlighted, like brother-sister relationship, the sort of frenemies type relationship. And then in my book Never, it's about the two brothers. In October, it's about a young girl who is very drawn to and admires another girl. And so there's always like some relationship that is just the seed of the idea for my books. And so that is just going to be what I'm focusing on. That's what it's all about for me.